Living in hell. That is how President Trump described an American city today. The president is keeping up his attacks on Baltimore and Democratic Congressman Elijah Cummings, again calling the lawmaker a racist. President Trump is not backing down, actually saying that his rants are, quote, good for him. Joining me now, Washington Post political reporter Eugene Scott, Christine Pelosi, Democratic strategist and daughter of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Anna Palmer, senior Washington correspondent for Politico, and my friend John Harwood, CNBC editor-at-large. Let's go first to President Trump speaking earlier.
Baltimore has been very badly mishandled for many years. As you know, Congressman Cummings has been there for a long time. He's had a very iron hand on it. It's a corrupt city. There's no question about it. I think I'm helping myself because I'm pointing out the tremendous corruption that's taken place in Baltimore and other Democratic-run cities. I've received more phone calls than I think on any other subject of people from Baltimore and other cities corruptly run by Democrats thanking me for getting involved. Those people are living in hell in Baltimore. They're largely African-American. You have a large African-American population, and they really appreciate what I'm doing because all that money that's been spent over 20 years has been stolen and wasted by people like Elijah Cummings. I am the least racist person there is anywhere in the world. When con men, who I've known almost all my business life, because I had to deal with them, unfortunately, in New York, but I got along with him, Al Sharpton. Now, he's a racist. He's a racist. The African-American people have been calling the White House. They have never been so happy as what a president has done. Not only the lowest unemployment in history for African-Americans, not only opportunity zones for really the biggest beneficiary, the inner cities, and not only criminal justice reform, but they're so happy that I pointed out the corrupt politics of Baltimore. It's filthy dirty. It's so horrible, and they are happy as hell.
Eugene, we heard the president say there and other things that these attacks are good for him because he's bringing these problems to light. The president has been in office for 2 years, and Baltimore is part of Maryland, one of the 50 states. Do you know of any federal programs, any Marshall Plan of sorts that the president has put forward to Elijah Cummings or the mayor of Baltimore to solve some of these problems?
I am not aware of any of those programs, Stephanie, and if they existed, the president or his surrogates would have made that public by now to make the case that these spaces have improved since he entered the Oval Office. But he hasn't, and they haven't, because he did not. What he did do is campaign in 2016 promising to fix the problems that existed in inner cities, telling black voters what do they have to lose. Well, the reality is he hasn't shown any type of proposal, any type of policy, any type of accomplishment that has left these cities better off than they were when he got in the White House. And it's fascinating now that the president seems to think that the full responsibility of improving these spaces relies on the congressman that represents them, because when President Barack Obama was in office, he blamed President Barack Obama for the state of the inner cities. Following that logic, it would now be President Trump's responsibility to respond to these challenges, and he has yet to do so. And this is something that black voters will remember as he runs for re-election.
Christine, we are going into this debate tonight with the president not talking infrastructure, not talking health care, not talking, well, he has mentioned the low unemployment number for African Americans, but not getting into those kitchen table issues. Instead, he's going big on race, attacking 5 members of Congress. How will this be responded to this evening?
Well, Stephanie, it's pretty clear there's a couple of things going on here. Elijah Cummings spoke with moral courage and conviction twice last week. Once when he talked after the Robert Mueller hearings about the fact that we have to fight what's going on in this country, and we will be asked, where were you? What did you do? And second, he took on the head of the border and talked about the squalid conditions in Trump border camps. He also subpoenaed members of Trump's own family, his government advisors, including Mr. Kushner, who is a slumlord in Baltimore. So if they want to model what living in a place that is clean could look like, they could start with the Kushner-owned apartments in Baltimore. But larger than that, larger than his racism, and let's stipulate, he's racist, and no, black people can't be racist. Oppressed people seeking equality may be a threat to Donald Trump, but they're not. That's not racism. That's something else. So tonight, what you're going to see, and the Democratic candidates have to do, they have to be real. They have to go big. They have to act like they can be commanders in chief of our military and of our entire country. And they also have to give us a vision of life post 45. Give me a vision 2 years from now when I turn on my television and I don't have these racist rants. Instead, what are you doing to solve my problems and to bring Americans together? That's the challenge for Democrats tonight.
But Anna, has the president successfully changed the narrative? Being called a racist isn't new for the president. But to Christine's point, last week, Elijah Cummings was speaking after the Mueller testimony. He spoke about the border. I haven't even included, there's Jeffrey Epstein in the news. And then there, of course, there's Jared and Ivanka's emails. Those are not at top of mind. It's responding to the president's attacks. Is that President Trump yet again setting the narrative?
This president, probably more than any other, spoils for a fight. I think that he was looking for an attack line to go after Elijah Cummings after he started probing into his family. This is not surprising, and this is something that I expect he's going to return to time and time again. It's a play that he believes is strong for his base. I think one of the big questions I have, you have a lot of members of Congress who are going to be going back home for several weeks, who are going to be talking to their constituents. And if this comes up, how do Republicans respond, particularly when it comes to some of the suburban voters? The women suburban voters right now have been very turned off, according to recent reports, by some of the rhetoric that the president has employed. And so where do they fall down on this? Is this going to be something where they push back against the president, or is it going to be yet again another time where Republicans kind of just try to look down and move past what the president is doing on racial issues?
But John Harwood, one of the things that helped President Trump win in 2016 was his promise and pledge of economic populism. That's we're going to, the system is rigged, all of your manufacturing jobs have gone overseas, and immigrants have stolen our jobs here. Economic populism is something Bernie Sanders also likes to discuss. Is the president trying to distract from the fact that he hasn't delivered that agenda? In fact, he's delivered a much more classic GOP agenda with a massive corporate tax cut and leaving loopholes like carried interest still in the system.
Well, it's always hard to tell, Stephanie, how much of what the president does is deliberate strategy as opposed to reacting on impulses, visceral impulses in the moment. I tend to think it's more the latter. On the other hand, he does know, and all the studies have shown, that the appeal to racial resentment that he offered in 2016, that's what launched him as a candidate. That's the consistent theme throughout his public life and in business before he was president, when he was helping run the Trump Organization and the Justice Department sued them for racial discrimination. He believes these things. He feels these things. And it's also the case, as you just suggested, that the economic promises that he made in 2016 have not, in fact, been fulfilled. We did get a goose to growth that followed the tax cuts. That is now fading. We're now back at a 2% trend, the same trend that existed before he was president. Yes, African-American unemployment has gone down, but has been going down ever since the post-financial crisis period. A lot of that time under President Obama.
We have that graph on our screen.
That is not about particular. Yeah, that is not about particular policies that President Trump has advanced. He's in deep trouble because this behavior has alienated college-educated white voters, and some of the economic record is alienating the non-college voters. We saw 47% in the Quinnipiac poll yesterday, 47% of non-college white voters said, white women voters said they are definitely not voting for Trump in 2020. So he's got big problems across the board.
Eugene, you write in your latest piece that the president's race-baiting strategy is about targeting people who feel left behind. The president has had the last 2 years to take that portion of the population and lift them up. And those who he hasn't lifted up, what could he be saying to them? And the rest of his base, they're sticking with him no matter what he says.
Well, I think that's because we know that feeling left behind is not the same thing as actually being left behind. And the reality is, despite many of the president's supporters saying that it was the economic anxiety that they were experiencing that led them to get on the Trump train, it was the cultural anxiety. And so while some of these people may feel like they're having a hard time and that life is not going as well for them, we do know that there's data from the 2016 presidential election showing that the average Trump voter actually did come from a household with a higher income than the national average as a whole. That doesn't mean that there weren't Trump supporters who did have challenges. They absolutely did. And the president has not done a sufficient job to many of them to respond to those. It really means that it was the cultural anxiety that led them to back this president more than anything else. They know that, he knows that, and that's why he continues to respond to them with this issue, because it speaks to that.
Anna, the president says he plans to visit Baltimore when the time is right. But in the last day, the White House has received thousands of accolades from the African-American community for the comments the president has made about Baltimore. He continues to say that billions of dollars have been stolen. Is there any evidence to support this?
Not so far. The White House has not put forward any list of groups. I mean, really, the only public statements that we have seen have been the outcry and the opposite, actually, of Democrats and other national leaders condemning what the president has said. It's not surprising. He often kind of puts things like this out there that are very, we try to track down in the press that simply don't seem to be based in truth.
Christine, filmmaker Michael Moore recently told Seth Meyers how Michigan turned from red to blue in 2018 with a strategy first used by Republicans. Moore said Democrats should use it to get more voters to the polls.
I want to talk about strategy because you called this last time, and talk about what happened in Michigan in 2018.
Last November, Michigan sadly went red for Trump in 2016. But this past November, we brought it back to blue. And we kicked out all the Republicans in the state capitol. And we got the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, secretary of state. And we kicked out 2 Republicans, congressmen, in suburban Detroit, and replaced them with 2 Democratic women. So Michigan is now back. Now, let me tell you how we did it. Here's how we did it. And we got to do this in states, especially the swing states, next year. Ballot proposals brought out the people to vote last November who may not have voted. So we came up with this idea. Let's get 2 ballot proposals. Actually, this is Karl Rove's and Bush's idea. In 2004, they got 14 states to put an amendment on the ballot proposal to ban gay marriage. And it passed in all 14 states, and it brought out enough people to get Bush elected. We can do this time if we put ballot measures on the ballots. We did it in Michigan with marijuana legalization. We doubled the youth vote from the previous off-year election, and the African-American vote, which thousands had sat it out in 16, unhappy with the choices, came back to vote last November because we had a ballot proposal to make gerrymandering and voter suppression illegal. And it passed. Marijuana passed, and we had a huge African-American turnout, and that gave us we got Democrats elected off it. So instead of putting all our hopes in one politician to carry the thing, we have to get these ballot proposals on in the swing states. That will bring out people to vote.
What do you think about that, Christine, putting things other than the presidential race on the ballot?
Well, we've been doing that in California for decades, so we know the strategy works because we do it in our home state. We've been doing that since Nancy Pelosi was chair of the California Democratic Party when I was a teenager. So let's not forget, we won the House in 2018 because the day after the election, then leader Nancy Pelosi was on the phone with the grassroots fighting to protect our care. We knew that if Trump won, the 2 things we would have to worry about would be the Supreme Court and the Affordable Care Act, because we knew that he would immediately try to repeal the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, which he has tried to do. So we had 10,000 grassroots events to protect our care. Today, on the birthday of Medicare and Medicaid, you've got people all over the country who are commemorating that anniversary, and groups like our little lobbyists, children with disabilities, who are helping lead the fight. So what won was the women coming out to vote. What won were women and people of color running for office and coming out to vote for each other in unprecedented numbers to say this may be who America is now, but it's not who we want to be. So yes, ballot measures are important, but candidates are important, grassroots messages are important. And again, tonight, the presidential candidates are going to have to convince people that they can lead a broad coalition, bring together the different wings of the party, and make a direct case to voters in the Midwest and across America that we are going to protect your care, we are going to expand and protect Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and we are going to lift your wages, and we are going to make sure that there's room in this society for everyone. That's how we won the House in 2018, and that's how we'll win in 2020.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.